Today's case is one of the very interesting cases. I won't say anything now and I won't take any longer. So let's get into it. July 13th, 2011, 6:48 in the morning. The sun was just beginning to rise over Coronado Island, California. One of the most beautiful, most expensive, most exclusive zip codes in the entire United States. The kind of place where old money meets new ambition, where beach mansions sit behind iron gates, and the sound of the ocean muffles everything, including secrets. And on that particular morning, a man picked up his phone and dialed 911. What he reported would set off one of the most baffling, most debated, most infuriating mysteries in modern American true crime history. A case that would drag on for over a decade. That would pit a grieving family against a billion-dollar empire. That would expose the very limits of justice. And ask a question the system still refuses to answer definitively. Was it really suicide? Or was it murder? Before we talk about how Rebecca Zahau died, we need to talk about how she lived. Because here is the truth that gets buried under all the headlines, all the forensic debates, all the legal battles. Rebecca was a person. A full, complicated, beautiful, deeply loved human being. And in order to truly understand the tragedy of what happened to her, you need to know who she was, where she came from, what she survived before she ever set foot in that mansion. Her story doesn't start in California. It doesn't start in Arizona or Missouri or Germany. It starts in the mountains. Rebecca Nyingson Maui, and that name, in her language, means springtime beauty, was born on March 15, 1979, in the Chin Hills of northwestern Myanmar, which was then still commonly called Burma. Say that name slowly. Springtime beauty. Even in the naming of her, there was poetry. She was the second eldest daughter of 6 siblings, born to Pukua Nin Tang and Pai Zung Tin Par, known to friends in America simply as Robert and Perry, from the Phunt village of Phalum Township in Chin State, also known as Chinland. Now, if you're not familiar with Chin State, let me paint you a picture. This is a remote, mountainous region in one of the most isolated parts of Southeast Asia. Dozens of distinct tribal groups live there, each with its own language, its own customs, its own identity. The Zahau are one of those tribes, and Rebecca's family wasn't just from this tribe. She told friends that her grandfather was chief of the Zahau tribe. She came from royalty, in the truest sense of the word her culture would recognize. But royalty in that context didn't mean safety. Both her grandfather and her father were freedom fighters, opposed to the military regime's systematic ethnic cleansing through forced labor, forced migration, rape, and religious persecution, particularly of the Chin people, who had been converted to Christianity by American missionaries in the 19th century. Think about what that means for a moment. Rebecca Zahau was born into a family that was actively fighting for survival. Not metaphorically, literally. Her family risked their lives in a country where speaking out against the government could get you disappeared. Where ethnic minorities were not just second-class citizens, they were targets. Rebecca came from a family of Chin ethnicity and was raised as a Protestant. Her Christian faith was not just a cultural marker. It was part of her family's identity, part of what made them targets under the Burmese military regime. And yet somehow, from all of that, from mountains and militias and the uncertainty of being born into the wrong ethnic group in the wrong country, Rebecca Zahau emerged as a person her family described as the glue, the warmth, the one who held everyone together. After living in Nepal and Germany, Zahau moved to the United States about 10 years before her death. Think about that journey. Burma to Nepal, Nepal to Germany, Germany to the United States. This is not a woman who had an easy, comfortable, sheltered life. This is a woman who crossed continents, who navigated being a foreigner in multiple countries, speaking multiple languages, adapting to entirely different cultures, and still managed to build a life, build a career, and by all accounts, build joy wherever she went. As of 2011, her parents and most family members lived in St. Joseph, Missouri. She had an older sister, Mary, who becomes a central figure in this story. A younger sister named Snoam, who lived in Germany. A teenage sister named Zena, who would also find herself at the center of unimaginable events in July of 2011. And other siblings. This was a tight family, a family that stayed connected across oceans and time zones. A family that called each other regularly, that texted throughout the day, that would drop everything for each other. Remember that. It matters. By the early 2000s, Rebecca had settled in Scottsdale, Arizona. She was living in Scottsdale with her then-husband, Neil Nalipa, by 2002. She worked as an ophthalmologic technician for several years. An ophthalmologic technician. Let's talk about that for a second, because people have a habit of reducing Rebecca to her relationship with a wealthy man. But she had a career. She had expertise. She studied, she trained, she built professional skills in a medical field. She wasn't riding anyone's coattails. In 2002, she married 36-year-old nursing student Neil Nalipa of Scottsdale, Arizona. The marriage lasted almost a decade. It was, by most accounts, a generally quiet partnership. They divorced in February 2011, just 5 months before Rebecca's death. Now, the authorities would later point to the divorce, to the shoplifting arrest from 2009, to various aspects of Rebecca's personal history, as evidence of someone who was emotionally unstable, someone capable of a desperate act. Let's address those things directly. In August 2009, Zahau was arrested for shoplifting after stealing $1,000 worth of jewelry from a Macy's in Phoenix, Arizona, to which she pled guilty. Was this a good moment? No. Was it a defining one? Absolutely not. People make mistakes. People do things that are out of character, especially when they're going through difficult personal periods. This was a single incident. It did not define who Rebecca Zahau was as a person. She worked as an ophthalmic technician until quitting in December 2010. By that point, her life was changing significantly. The divorce was finalized in early 2011, but she had also, by then, been in a serious relationship for about 3 years with a man who would bring her into a completely different world. Jonah Shacknai. So who is Jonah Shacknai? Jonah Shacknai was born in New York in 1957. He received his JD from Georgetown University. By 1988, he started his own company, Medici's Pharmaceuticals, whose biggest seller was Botox alternatives. In 2010, Shacknai was the 9th highest paid CEO in Arizona, earning $6.4 million. To understand the scale of his wealth, he bought the seaside Spreckles mansion in 2007 for almost $13 million. That's his summer home, his vacation property, the place he went to escape the Arizona heat. The property at 1043 Ocean Boulevard is the historic 27-room mansion facing the Pacific, built by sugar baron John D. Spreckles in 1907 as a beach house. Spreckles was one of the wealthiest men in California at the time. He owned railroads, newspapers, and essentially built the infrastructure of San Diego. His beach house is an architectural landmark. And this is where Rebecca Zahau would spend her final days. Jonah had 2 previous marriages. His first marriage to Kimberly James resulted in a divorce and a 3-year custody fight over the couple's 2 children. He had a son, Maxfield Aaron Max Shacknai, born June 7, 2005, with second wife Dina Romano. Dina Romano. Remember that name too. In 2008, Zahau began dating Jonah Shacknai, the CEO of Medici's Pharmaceutical, while she was still married to Nalipa. The relationship began while she was technically still in her marriage, though the divorce process was clearly already underway emotionally, if not yet legally. She and Jonah dated for about 3 years before her death, and by all accounts from people who knew them, it was a genuinely loving relationship. Shacknai told a friend his relationship with Zahau was the most tranquil he had ever known. In all their time together, they argued only once. For Zahau, the relationship was a fairy tale ending to her story, says a close friend. It couldn't happen to a better person. People tried to characterize them. Just because he was older and wealthy, they thought she must have been going after him for his money. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. A fairy tale. That phrase is going to hit differently by the end of this video. By the summer of 2011, Rebecca had essentially become the woman of the house at the Spreckles mansion. She and Jonah were living together in Coronado. She had given up her career. She was deeply integrated into his life, his routines, and his family, including his young son, Max. Maxfield Aaron Shacknai Max was 6 years old in the summer of 2011. He was born on June 7, 2005, the son of Jonah and his second wife, Dina Romano. By all accounts, Max was an energetic, curious, playful little boy, the kind of kid who lit up a room, and Rebecca genuinely cared for him. This wasn't a reluctant stepmother situation. People who observed them together described a warm, natural relationship. On July 11th, 2011, everything changed. Zahau, Max, and Zahau's teenage sister, Zina, were at the Spreckles mansion in Coronado, California, which Shacknai used as a summer estate. Jonah was thinking about taking Max to the zoo that day, but first he decided to get in a quick workout at Hollywood Fitness 3 blocks away. Rebecca stayed home with Max. At some point that morning, Max was playing by himself on the second floor. At some point during that day, Max fell face-first over a second-floor banister, suffering injuries to his spinal cord and facial bones, the former of which affected his heart rate and breathing. What exactly happened in those moments is a question that has never been fully resolved. No one saw him fall. Zahau said she was in the bathroom at the time. She found Max moments later, and Zina called 911. Max was not breathing and unresponsive, and was taken to Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego. Jonah rushed back from the gym. The world cracked open. Now, and pay very close attention here, a trauma doctor who examined the child prior to his death and autopsy stated to police that he did not believe the injuries from his fall were consistent with the cardiac arrest and brain swelling experienced by him, suggesting that Max may have suffocated prior to his fall. Hear that again. A trauma doctor said that the nature of Max's injuries was not consistent with a simple fall over a railing. The injuries suggested possible suffocation before the fall. This opens up another entire layer of mystery around these events. But law enforcement would ultimately rule Max's death as an accident, and that's the ruling that stood. But here's what's important for our story. In the immediate aftermath of Max's fall, Rebecca was consumed with grief and guilt. Whether or not she had any actual responsibility for what happened to Max, she felt responsible. She was the adult in the house. She was supposed to be watching him. All of it doesn't fit, her sister Mary would later say. The conversation she and I had the day before she died, none of it adds up. She had 2 detailed plans for the next day: to take things for Jonah, to the hospital, to fix something for him to eat. She told me to tell our mom that she would call her on her way to the hospital in the morning, that she was going to text me throughout the day. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's walk through the final 48 hours of Rebecca Zahau's life, minute by minute, as carefully as the evidence allows. Because this timeline is everything. July 11th, 2011, the fall. Max falls. Emergency services are called. He is rushed to Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego, placed in a medically induced coma, listed in critical condition. His father, Jonah, abandons everything and rushes to the hospital. His ex-wife, Dina Romano, Max's mother, is also there. Rebecca is in shock. She went to the hospital too, to be with Jonah, to show support, to bear witness to this nightmare unfolding. Rebecca returned to the hospital the next day to see Max again, while Dina was home sleeping after an all-night vigil. July 12th, 2011. So her teenage sister, the only other person who had been at the mansion during Max's fall, is now gone. Rebecca is alone in the house. She then picked up Jonah Shacknai's brother, Adam, who had just arrived on a flight from Memphis, Tennessee. Adam Shacknai, Jonah's younger brother, a tugboat pilot who worked on the Mississippi River in Memphis. He'd flown out when he heard about Max's accident. He'd come to support his brother. That evening, Rebecca ate dinner with Adam and Jonah, along with a friend named Howard. Zahau was extremely quiet through dinner. She tried to explain what happened, but said little else. In later depositions, Adam says that Rebecca was quiet through dinner and that he felt sorry for her. After dinner, Zahau dropped Jonah back at the hospital, where he would keep a vigil at Max's bedside with the child's mother, Dina Romano, leaving only briefly to rest at a nearby Ronald McDonald house, and she and Adam returned to the mansion. So now we have the setup that matters most: Rebecca Zahau and Adam Shacknai, alone at the Spreckles mansion overnight. Jonah is at the hospital. Zina is gone. According to police depositions, Adam reports that upon returning to the mansion, he tried to offer some reassurance to Rebecca, who was clearly distressed. He said, I know something about grief. If there is anything you want to talk about, I'm around. After this short exchange, the two reportedly went their separate ways for the night. Adam says he took an Ambien and went to sleep in the guest house. There were reports of loud music coming from the beach house later that night. Who was playing that music? Was it Rebecca? Was it someone else? That detail has never been satisfactorily explained. Now let's look at what Rebecca's phone records tell us about her final hours. According to AT&T records, from roughly 8 p.m. until 10, Zahau talked and texted with her older sister Mary, who confirmed that Zina had arrived home safely. Normal. Checking in. Making sure her little sister got home safe. This is what a person who is present, engaged, and thinking about tomorrow does. At 10:48 p.m., Zahau received a text from Nina Romano, the twin sister of Jonah Shacknai's ex-wife, who wanted to stop by the house and talk about Max's accident. Zahau did not reply to that message. Rebecca didn't respond to Nina Romano's text. We don't know why. Was she asleep? Was she upset? Was something happening? We simply don't know. Police said Zahau checked her voicemail a few hours later, at 12:50 a.m., and listened to a message. Billing records do not show who left that message. Police stated it was a message regarding the worsening of Max's condition, but declined to confirm at that time who left the message. Mary stated that police told her it was from Jonah. The message was deleted, meaning that police and Zahau's family never heard the contents of the message. This is one of the most critically important details in the entire case. At 12:50 in the morning, Rebecca listened to a voicemail. The message was deleted. No one knows exactly what it said. No one knows who left it, though police believe it was Jonah, with news about Max's condition. Investigators initially did not attempt to power up or operate the cell phone, fearing that they might overwrite evidence. On August 15th, unable to identify any forensic software for that phone model, a detective turned on the phone and conducted a manual search, finding that the voicemail message was not stored on the phone. They did not request that AT&T try to retrieve the deleted message from its servers. That voicemail, potentially the last communication Rebecca ever received, possibly the thing that set off whatever happened next, was gone, and law enforcement made limited efforts to recover it. And after 12:50 a.m., Rebecca Zahau falls silent. No more texts. No more calls. Nothing. July 13th, 2011. On the morning of July 13th, at roughly 6:45 a.m., Adam stated that he found Zahau's nude body hanging from a balcony, with her wrists and ankles bound and her hands behind her back. He called 911 at 6:48 a.m., then sent a text message to his brother to inform him of the news. He cut down Zahau's body before the police arrived. Let's sit with that scene for a moment, because the details are staggering. Rebecca Zahau was found, naked, hanging from a second-floor balcony by a rope, ankles bound together, wrists tied behind her back, a shirt stuffed in her mouth as a gag. The rope was tied to the bedpost inside her room. The other end was looped around her neck. There were toe and heel prints on the balcony railing, consistent with someone leaning over or going over. And on the bedroom door, painted in black block letters, was this message. She saved him, can you save her? Adam told police he walked out of the guest house in the morning, looked toward the main house, and saw her hanging there. He called 911, ran inside, grabbed a kitchen knife, cut her down, and attempted CPR. Medics arrived. They could not revive her. Rebecca Zahau was pronounced dead at the scene. Now let's do what the best true crime analysis always does. Look at the evidence without assumption. What did investigators actually find? The rope. Authorities described the manner of death as tying a rope around a bed, wrapping the other end of it around her neck, binding her feet and hands, and throwing herself off a second-floor balcony. The rope was red. It ran from the bedpost to the balcony. That's a fact both sides agree on. The bindings. Cold case investigator Paul Holes explained. For Zahau to have killed herself as described, she would have had to cut several pieces of rope, bind her feet, tie a noose and put it around her neck, along with a t-shirt she had shoved in her mouth. Once she'd done that, she'd have to go through a very complex series of steps to try to tie a complex knot around both wrists, and get that behind her back. Finally, she'd have to hop over the balcony and and throw herself off. Authorities acknowledge this is unusual. They actually filmed a demonstration video to show it was physically possible. They showed a woman of similar size to Rebecca performing the self-binding, wrapping rope around her hands in front of her, slipping one hand out, placing both hands behind her back, and readying. Is it possible? The police say yes. Is it plausible? That's where people deeply disagree. The knots. A knot expert hired by the Zahau family testified at the civil trial that the knots tied around Rebecca were consistent with nautical maritime knots. Adam, a tugboat captain, would be familiar with such knots, the family's attorney argued. A different knot expert for the defense testified that self-tying was possible in this case, and disputed the claim that the knots on Zahau's body were uniquely nautical. So, one expert says the knots are nautical and point to someone with maritime experience, like Adam. Another says the knots are nothing special and could have been done by anyone. This is a classic forensic stalemate. Two experts, two opposite conclusions. The painted message. A cryptic message, "She saved him, can you save her?" was scrawled in black paint and block lettering on the door of Zahau's room. Lab testing revealed the message painted on the door matched paint found on Rebecca's body. 2 kitchen knives were also found inside the room. Paint was found on Rebecca's right hand, left breast, right nipple, right upper chest, right upper index finger, and neck. Police interpretation. Rebecca painted the message herself as a kind of goodbye note, explaining that she had tried to save Max but couldn't. Her thumbprint was found on the cap of the paint tube. Family interpretation. Attorney Keith Greer believes that Adam Shacknai painted the message and then applied paint to Zahau's body. "It's like somebody pinched her nipples," Greer said. "She has black paint there." Zahau liked to paint as a hobby and had signed her paintings in the past. Her siblings contended that the message did not match her handwriting. But here's the complication. The message was painted in block letters. Handwriting analysis expert Lonnie Coombs noted, "The message was so limited and the exemplars were so limited. There really weren't enough points of comparison for an expert to be able to make a strong conclusion." The head injuries. Zahau's autopsy results revealed 4 instances of head trauma. 4. Let that sink in. For separate areas of head trauma on a woman whose death was ruled a suicide by hanging. San Diego medical examiner Jonathan Lucas stated that because there was evidence that she went over the balcony in a non-vertical position, she may have struck her head on the balcony on the way down. But forensic consultant Dr. Maurice Godwin expressed doubt, stating, "The chances of bumping into the railing, going over the balcony, and hitting your head 4 times is highly unlikely." For separate head injuries. From a fall? Or from something else? The DNA mystery. Investigators were unable to find any other DNA at the scene besides Zahau's. Supporters of the suicide ruling point to this as definitive. If someone had been in that room with Rebecca, there would be DNA. There was none. But here's the counter-argument. Adam says he gave Rebecca CPR after he cut her down, and yet none of his DNA is found anywhere on Rebecca's body. Investigator Coombs noted, "That right there is a mystery. Think about that. He claims to have administered CPR, mouth-to-mouth, chest compressions, direct physical contact, and left 0 DNA? That's extraordinary. If he was close enough to perform CPR, his DNA should be there. It wasn't." The sexual assault question. This is perhaps the most disturbing element of the evidence. Forensic specialist Lisa DeMeo, formerly of the San Diego Sheriff's Department, was called by the Zahau family's attorney at the civil trial. DeMeo testified that Zahau's menstrual blood was on all 4 sides of the knife handle that was found at the scene. Attorney Greer alleged that the blood being on all 4 sides of the handle indicated a sexual assault. Defense witness Dennis Williams, a former lead forensic evidence technician, testified that she believed the blood on the knife came from an injury on Rebecca's hand. Once again, 2 experts, 2 opposite readings of the same evidence. But the mere possibility that a weapon found at the scene had Rebecca's blood on all 4 sides of its handle, in a pattern consistent with sexual assault, is deeply disturbing. Attorney Keith Greer alleged during opening statements of the civil trial that the defendant delivered 4 blows to Zahau's head, rendering her at least partially unconscious, then sexually assaulted her. After, Greer said her hands and feet were bound and a noose was put around her neck before her body was thrown over the balcony. The balcony. On the balcony, authorities found bare feet and toe impressions they believe were consistent with Zahau's foot size and a person leaning forward over the railing. Sheriff investigators said disturbances to dust on the railing matched the width of Zahau's torso and the rope. A boot print that was traced to a responding officer was also on the balcony. The foot and toe impressions are consistent with either scenario: a woman standing at the railing before jumping, or a woman being carried to and pushed over the railing. On September 2nd, 2011, less than 2 months after Rebecca's body was found, San Diego Sheriff Bill Gore formally announced that Zahau's death was a suicide. The official theory: Rebecca Zahau, consumed with guilt and grief over Max's accident, took her own life in an unusual but not impossible manner. She painted a message on the door. She tied herself up. She went over the balcony. The motive, according to authorities: Zahau had been babysitting Max when he fell, and she was consumed with remorse over what had happened to the boy. She allegedly listened to a voicemail from Jonah Shacknai informing her of Max's grave condition, and then killed herself. Rebecca's family heard this explanation, and they rejected it, completely, categorically, without hesitation. Here's why. Her younger sister, Snoam Horwath, insisted. Becky did not commit suicide. My sister was murdered, her former personal trainer stated. She was always happy and always smiling when she came in. I didn't see a problem or anything like that. Her ex-husband Neil Nalipa was quoted saying, "I would not believe Rebecca would commit suicide. It's out of character." Family members disputed police characterizations of Zahau as depressed, describing her instead as a happy person. Furthermore, they state that Zahau believed as a Christian that suicide was wrong. This last point is significant. Rebecca Zahau was a devout Protestant. Her faith was central to her identity. It had been central to her family's identity for generations, going back to when American missionaries first reached the Chin Hills in the 19th century. For her to take her own life would be, in her belief system, a grave sin. Those who knew her say it was simply unthinkable. And then there's the conversation with her sister Mary the night before she died. Mary Zahau said, "The conversation she and I had the day before she died, none of it adds up." She had 2 detailed plans for the next day: to take things for Jonah, to fix something for him to eat. She told me to tell our mom that she would call her on her way to the hospital in the morning, that she was going to text me throughout the day. I mean, that's somebody who's planning to kill herself. That is a devastating point. Rebecca Zahau, in the last conversation anyone in her family had with her, was making plans for the next day. Specific plans. She was going to bring Jonah food. She was going to call her mother. She was going to text throughout the day. People who are planning to die do not make plans for tomorrow. They do not tell their sister to pass messages to their mother. They do not make asterisk grocery lists. From the moment the suicide ruling was announced, Rebecca's family launched a campaign to be heard. A campaign that would last over a decade and cost them an unimaginable amount in money, time, grief, and health. On September 7th, 2011, the family launched the website justiceforrebecca.org, seeking donations to fund their own investigation into Zahau's death. They hired attorneys. They went on television. They spoke to anyone who would listen. Zahau's family hired Seattle attorney in Bremner, who derided the medical examiner's conclusions, stating, "This would be the first case in the history of the world that a woman killed herself like this. It's ridiculous on the face of it." On September 20th, 2011, Jonah Shacknai wrote a letter to California Attorney General Kamala Harris. Yes, that Kamala Harris, requesting a state review of the investigation. Shacknai himself did not doubt the findings, but said he hoped a review would bring confidence, comfort, and resolution to others close to Zahau. However, Chief Assistant Attorney General Dane Gillette replied the following day, stating that, "We must decline your invitation to review this investigation at this time." Door number 1 closed. The Zahau family exhumed Rebecca's remains, and renowned forensic pathologist Dr. Cyril Wecht performed a second autopsy. Dr. Cyril Wecht is one of the most famous forensic pathologists in American history. He's testified in countless high-profile cases. He examined Rebecca's body, and his conclusions were stunning. Wecht testified that he believed fractures in Zahau's throat were caused by manual strangulation, not by suicidal hanging. He further stated that he thought Zahau's death was a homicide. Manual strangulation, not hanging. If Wecht is right, it means someone choked Rebecca Zahau to death with their hands. And then the hanging was staged to look like a suicide. On the Dr. Phil show, Wecht said he found there was enough evidence to suspect foul play. But the California Attorney General's office denied their petition to reopen the case. Door number 2 closed. The family kept fighting. In 2012, they formally requested the investigation be reopened. Denied. Also in 2012, Jonah sold his company for $2.6 billion, while Dina Romano asked the investigation into Max's death be reopened. Her motion was also denied. $2.6 billion. The sale of Medici's pharmaceuticals. This is the world Rebecca had been living in. This is the financial gravity that surrounds every aspect of this case. In 2013, the Zahau family did something bold. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit, and they named a specific defendant. Not Jonah Shacknai. Not anyone connected to the mansion in some vague way. They named Adam Shacknai, Jonah's younger brother, the tugboat captain from Memphis, the man who said he found Rebecca's body and called 911. The lawsuit alleged that Adam Shacknai had murdered Rebecca Zahau. The civil trial that would follow would take years to arrive. And when it finally came, it would shake everything. But that story, the courtroom showdown, the verdict, the settlement, the aftermath, and where this case stands today in 2025, that is part 2. So stay tuned for the part 2. Hope to see you soon.